All right. Well, welcome to Inside America's Minds. Today we have a guest, Robert B. Foster. How are you, Robert?
I am well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So you and I met several months ago on our friend Sharifa Hardy's roundtable talk show out of LA.
Yes.
Yeah, and she's an incredible woman. And what I have to say is I was immediately very impressed with how diplomatic you were, with how you were able to reach the guests, including myself, in a very diplomatic way, and also make a point, and how motivating you are. So, Inside America's Minds is all about everyday people like you and me with extraordinary experiences. And then you and I talked a lot after that.
Yes.
And I asked you a little bit about your life story. And then little by little, all these incredible things kept revealing themselves. So you're a perfect guest for Inside America's Minds. So I want to start with, tell us a little bit about you. Shut up and grind. And we're going to, towards the end of the show, we're going to actually focus in on what you do, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that will be interested in it. But tell us a little bit about you, Robert.
Okay. I am the youngest of seven siblings. I have four sisters and two brothers. I was born in Far Rockaway, New York. Okay. And I was born in Far Rockaway. The rest of my siblings were born in Brooklyn. And then I guess where we were living then caught on fire. And when my mom was pregnant with me, so they had to uproot my pregnant mom and the six siblings, and they moved over to Far Rockaway. And then my dad got a job up here in Rhode Island at Electric Boat. My dad was an engineer, so he got a job up here fixing submarines. So he actually came up here before the rest of the family. He got himself situated, found a house in a rural area with a better school system. Then he went back like 6 months later, I want to say, and got the family, and we moved up here. And then I was been living here, and well, I don't want to say been living here. I've lived in a couple other places, but pretty much I've lived in Rhode Island ever since.
Oh, okay. And from Brooklyn to Rockaway to Rhode Island, I mean, that is kind of like a subcultural shock there to a rural area. I mean, I would assume that would be very different. And where do you lie in birth order? There's seven of you. Mom had seven of you. God bless mom and dad. Where do you lie in birth order?
In birth order, I am dead last.
You are the baby. Okay.
I am the baby. Yes, and for full disclosure, I gotta say, my dad was married twice before. So if you want to get technical, my mom had four of us.
Okay.
Then my dad had my oldest two siblings from his first wife, and then the sister I gave the kidney to was from his second wife.
Well, you just threw that in there. The sister I gave the kidney to, and you're a kidney donor. Wow.
I forgot that we've already spoken.
No, but this is what I love about that. This is another reason, which I didn't know about until now, that you're extraordinary. You donated a kidney. That's not an everyday thing like saying, hey, I picked you up a burger and fries here. You actually donated a kidney. Wow. So we're going to talk about that. Yeah. So one thing about Inside America's Minds is taking a snapshot picture of the individual from the beginning to where you are at this point in your life. What is your earliest memory in the history of your life? What is the earliest memory about you?
The only thing I can remember from New York was we were at a playground. I went down a slide. Now, we moved out of New York. I think I was only 2. So I remember going down the slide, and I guess I had an accident in my diaper. and it kind of got onto the slide. Okay. And I remember my brother was like yelling at me, like, what are you doing? And so they were mad that they had to clean the slide. We had to go back in. They had to clean me up. But other than visiting, that's the only memory I have of New York, because I was so young when we moved out of there. So living in Rhode Island is all I know.
So what is the feeling attached to that first memory of leaving Hershey Highway down the kids' slide on the playground? What was that emotional feeling like?
It's like I can't even really recall like the emotional feeling, but my siblings love to tease me about it still to this day. 44 years later, they still tease me about it.
Oh, are you a happy person? Would you say that life is fulfilling for you?
Yes, I am. I'm a very glass half full.
Okay.
So I'm always, I like the sunrises, the sunsets. I love nature, I love hiking. Just I love all the finer things. Like so even last year with the pandemic, there was so many reasons to be upset or depressed or mad at the world. And I didn't do any of that. Like I've always looked for, all right, so how can we make this work? All right, that happened. So how can we make this work? And I get that from my dad. He was always a plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D. Like he never failed. He just found a different way. And I just grew up with that same mentality.
And you had a lot of challenges. So, aside from donating the kidney to your sister, which we're going to get to, what about your life makes you extraordinary, makes you different? Because I know there's been a lot of challenges because we've talked before. So, what makes you different? And then I have some very intimate questions to ask you as well.
Okay. So the first answer to that is that I don't follow the crowd. I never have. I've always marched to my own beat. So if everyone's saying, let's go left, and my thing is like, well, what's happening right? That's just how I've always been wired. So I'm very convicted in my stances on certain things. And like I don't want to say sell myself out, but I guess that's kind of what it is. So for my personal values, I don't sell them out to please other people. And a lot of people do that.
So, what is your first memory that you didn't go with the flow, that you were outside of the mean? What is your first memory of realizing that, hey, I'm different. I don't think like everybody else.
It was an apple bob contest.
An apple bobbing contest. So we have Skid Row, so to say, and then the apple bobbing. Okay.
So
Tell me more. Tell us more.
This was in second grade. It was second grade field day. So I think this was like 1980, 81, maybe somewhere around there. So we were having a field day, and this was more so where I learned to not let anyone else define me. So as we're waiting in line for our turn, to bob for apples, which would never happen nowadays, especially not with COVID around. But
I hope not.
So my friend, he's in front of me in line, just telling me, you have no chance of beating me. You shouldn't even be in line. And he's just trying to get under my skin.
And he's your friend. Okay.
Yeah. And he's, just trying to get in my head. And so I get up there, and I got to admit, he went down and up fast. Like he said a really fast time. And so again, he's bragging, he's taunting me. And I was like, all right, breathe, analytical. I found my apple. I pulled up my sleeve, right? I grabbed the rim, waited for the teacher. And he's like, all right, 1, 2, 3, go. And so right before I went in, I pinpointed one that was right toward the side. And I was like, if I can pin it to the bottom and, to sink my teeth in and come back up, I should be able to beat him, because he did it in 5 seconds. Like I said, he did it fast. And I ended up doing it in 2.2. And
wow.
So in the grand scheme of things, it's just a stupid contest. But psychologically, what that did for me was it just taught me, no matter how insurmountable the odds may seem, because the next closest to him was like 15 seconds, I want to say. It was like a 10-second gap. And so, like, just no matter how stacked the odds are against you, there's always a way to get through it.
So, and in the second grade, an apple bobbing contest is big, especially if that's your first win. You're competing with your best friend. Were you still friends after that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So what did you learn at a very early age about you, about Robert? Say that again.
Yeah. So what I learned about me is that I have to define my own outcome. Is I can't let somebody else define my outcome.
And so, how did you think about that with the mind of a second grader?
Just kind of like that. I mean, having so many siblings,
Mm.
like listening to my parents school them, because there's a good age gap between the oldest and myself. So I may have been in second grade, what's that, 7 or 8 years old, but my other siblings were almost adults, the two older ones. So a lot of it was just paying attention to the things that my parents were saying to them, and then just kind of banking it into my own memory. So like by the time I was a teenager, like I never got in trouble because they did all the trial and error for me. So it's like, all right, don't try to sneak out. Make sure you're back on time with the car. Like whatever you do, don't lie. So I just banked everything in the memory because I just listened to everything they went through. So that helped. So that helped to shape my own mindset about just staying on the positive and doing what needs to be done, to achieve whatever your goal is.
Now, you and I also had a discussion some time ago that, and I don't know if this is the appropriate word, correct me if I use the word biracial inappropriately, but you had said that. You said, I'm biracial. And we were talking about stereotypes at the time we were having this conversation. And tell me about that.
All right, so I'm half Black, half Puerto Rican.
Okay.
And for me with stereotypes, I think a lot of it's how you're raised.
Okay.
And that's not always a popular opinion, when you're a person of color, because like people want you to be mad and oppressed, and but that's just not me. Like that's not how I was raised. So one quote that my father said that I'll always remember, he says, people will always see the color of your skin. He said it's up to you to help them see past it. So in adopting that mentality, it's on me to make people see me. If all they see is the color of my skin, then I'm not putting forth my best self.
And how do you identify yourself?
As an American.
As an American. Okay, great. So if people, when you're filling out the applications, what gender you are, what race you are, what box do you check off?
If they have it, I usually put it says 2 or more.
2 or more. Now, before they had 2 or more, before we were kind of including everybody, and there was an increase in awareness of representation, what would you check off? Hispanic, Puerto Rican, African.
Hispanic is technically an ethnicity, so they don't count it as a race. So it would be Black of Hispanic origin.
Wow. All right. So and thank you for helping me better understand that, because everybody's different when I ask that question, the answers are usually different. So when was your first memory, again, in the history of your life, that there was prejudice, that there was racism?
Well, I mean, to me, there's different definitions of it.
Okay.
Because for me, if I have a disagreement with a white person, that to me that doesn't make it a racist interaction, or if I have an altercation with someone, that doesn't make it racist. So for me, I was in high school and I went to a predominantly white school. So there was like myself, my siblings, and some Indians. Everyone else was white. So
East Indians or American Indians?
American Indians.
Okay.
Yeah, like the Narragansett Indian tribe. And so I remember I had just finished gym class, and I'm walking out, have my books in my hand, and these 3 kids, I guess they were mad at the world that day. And so they kind of get in my face, like they're calling me names, calling me the N-word and all these other words.
Really? Oh my gosh.
Like
wow.
They shoved me up against the locker. And, obviously I dropped my books. And again, he's calling me names, trying to egg me on the fight. And I just bent down, picked up my books. I stood up. And, again, he's in my face. He was a shorter guy, so I don't know if he had Napoleon syndrome or something, but so
but he was with other guys, so he felt empowered, because there's power in numbers, especially when you're a bully. Okay.
Yeah. So I just said, look, I'm going to class. And again, they're back to the calling names, but like I didn't give them what they wanted. So it's kind of like when little boys are teasing little girls, right? You tell the girls, just ignore them and they'll go away. Like if you react, they want you to react. So if you don't react, they'll stop bothering you. You know, so like I didn't give them what they wanted that day, and they never bothered me again.
Really? Now, what
Yeah.
would have happened if they got physical with you, if they cornered you at that age in high school? What might you have done?
Well, I mean, I obviously would have done my best to defend myself against three people, but
Okay.
you know, but just initially, I didn't give them the reaction that they wanted, because for me, any type of hate, any type of bullying, it has to do with emotional control.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that's what it is. Like if I say these words to this person, they're gonna react this way. Or if I go up to a female and call her the B word or call her this or call her that, you know, that's to get a reaction. So I didn't give them the reaction they were looking for. And then from there, I never really had an issue. Like, you know, like there'll be some comments, but I feel like all races have it. I actually listened to a video yesterday where someone was saying with an interracial couple, and if someone says, you know, your baby could be dark skinned, like I don't see that as racist. I see that as fact. You know,
So
so
your perspective is very different. It's almost you actually normalize the experience of the integration of different races, which is the world we live in today. You
yes,
normalize, and you have your
yes,
family, the way you were raised was way ahead of the curve. How
yes,
now you have 5 children,
yes.
and how what do you tell them? Did you have the conversation with your sons, especially of how to act if a police stops you? Or what are the conversations you have with your sons and your daughters growing up?
Yeah, exactly the same way our parents told us. I told them, I said, listen, I said, this is a free country. I said, so don't let anyone else shape your mind. I said, whatever you want to achieve, you can go out there and achieve. I said, if you have to go through some hoops, then you go through the hoops. You do what's necessary. I said, if you apply for a job and you don't fit what they want, you apply for another job. Like you don't cry about that one. You apply
Hmm.
for another one. If you don't get that one, you apply for another one. And then you keep applying until you get the one that wants your skill set. I said that's all it takes. Like if you spend your life fighting people who don't like you, you will never stop fighting. And that's the message I give them. Like with my daughter before she went to college, I told her, I said, listen, I said, you're a mixed race female. I said, that means
Hmm.
absolutely nothing. I said, it means absolutely nothing. Whatever your goals are, I said, you go to school, you focus on your books. I said, you know, college is not to find yourself. So college is to create yourself.
Hmm.
And
I
so
like
you
that.
go and you create what you want to get out of this life. And don't let anybody stand in your way. And if they try to, then you got to run them over. I was like,
Okay.
that's what you do.
So how would you define yourself in one word?
Resilient.
Resilient. What was the most challenging day in your life, Robert, to date?
Most challenging day was watching my father die. So that was rough. That was real rough. You know, like he was the rock. You know, he was like the rock of the family. Not even just our immediate family, even the extended family. Like if we had a family reunion or something, like when Dad barked, everybody listened. You know, even like my 60, 65-year-old cousins, when my dad barked, even they like, yes, Uncle Richard. You know, it's like he just had that presence. You know, and when he spoke,
Hmm.
it was never anything negative, no matter what. Like I was paying, like in my old house, my mom, my like the mortgage was in my mom's name. So when I first started to do fitness and I decided I wasn't going to manage restaurants anymore, I remember going to my mom and I said, all right, listen, I'm not going to pay the mortgage anymore. And she's like, wait, what? I was like, I called the mortgage company and they said that we could do some things, but it kind of has to be behind in order to get into their programs to reduce the payment. I don't remember it's not a refinance. There's another word for it, but like it has to be in arrears. And so I told her about it. And of course she told Dad, and Dad was like, what? You know, like he wasn't too keen on it at first, but then he's like, if you see what you want, then go get it.
Okay. So Dad passes. How does life change for you?
So when he passed, it was kind of like we were doing a lot of talking while he was in the hospital. So I had, dreams of starting my podcast and
Mm.
doing more with speaking on stage. So now this is right before COVID had. I think COVID was still in China and Italy at this point. Hadn't
Okay.
really gotten to the US yet. So this was November 2019. And so, well, November was when he passed. So we were
Mm.
having these conversations while he was in and out of the hospital. And we would sit there and just talking about just different stories and just sharing about like how he's at the tail end of his. And I just reminded him, I was like, if we lose you, I said, just know that we're only losing you in body. I said, because everything that you've taught us, we're going to keep that moving. I said, so we're only losing you physically. So
Mm.
so that's what helps me. Like, that's why I can talk about it without breaking down now. Cause like, I know that he's here and those teachings that he instilled in us, we're pushing him forward. And then that moment, just watching him take his last breath and watching
Mm.
his body go lifeless, I was like, so I have to snatch that last breath, breathe it into me, and then keep everything moving, like just the way I told him it was going to keep moving.
Very difficult to lose a mentor and a parent,
Yeah.
especially one that you respect so much.
Yes.
What makes you extraordinary, Robert?
So I really don't think anything makes me per se extraordinary. Like, if I get shot, I'm going to bleed just like anybody else. But I think I have an extraordinary ability to get people to believe in themselves.
Yes.
And that started as a sports captain, back in elementary school, but more so in high school. Like, I remember, as I told you, I grew up in a very rural area. And so we were in one of the championship meets for track and field. And one of the city schools from up here at this end of the state, they were seeded first and they had a solid team. But I remember looking at it on paper and I went to my coach and I was like, we can beat them. And he's like, they're undefeated. I said, yeah, till today. I'm like, we can beat them. And so, we started looking at our roster and I was like, all right, so they're going to win here. I'm like, but if we take second and third, then we still match them in points. And we just got all into like, the psychology and the sports of it. And so it's like, all right, I said that, my events are going to be on lock. So I got that. Like, we know the sprinters are going to do this. Like, we need these guys here to step up and these guys to step up. And then I just kept going around to the whole team. I'm like, guys, we can beat them. I was like, you just have to believe. I'm like, Chris, can you get third in the hurdles today? So-and-so, can you get fourth place in the pole vault? It's like, you don't have to win. You just need to get fourth. And then it came down to the last event. And usually by the time the last event's here, in track, like once people do their event, they leave. It's not like basketball or soccer where the whole team stays together the whole time, but not one person left. Like, we had everyone bought in that we could slay Goliath. And we ended up winning.
So what's the message in that to other people?
As I said earlier, is to not let other people define your results. And too many times people let other people clip their wings. So if there's like a case in point, I was speaking at I believe it was a fourth grade school pre-COVID. And I was just going around asking the kids what they like to do. And one little girl rose her hand. She's like, I like to sing. And I was like, would you like to sing for us? And she's like, no. I'm like, why not? She says, because people might laugh at me.
Yeah.
Like, and that's what I mean. It's like people hold back their greatness out of fear of what other people might think.
So how do you teach people to let go of that fear or to take a leap of faith in themselves, to go to take that first step? That's what your company's about, which we're going to get to in a little bit. But how do you teach people to do that? Because what we're talking about is an emotion that becomes a very distorted thought, cognitive distortion. So taking that feeling versus fact, how do you bridge that? And that's the difference with the extraordinary people, is they actually take that leap of faith and they go for it. How do you do it? How do you teach them?
Well, the first step is to understand how we're programmed. And we are programmed to stay away from pain and things that scare us.
Mm-hmm.
We're just programmed. If you think back to the caveman days, or just think of a squirrel. Like the squirrel is the most stressed out animal out there. It's like any whit when you walk there, they're running up trees and stuff. And we have a touch of that too, even though we have houses and locks and everything else now. But way back in the day, we had to be on the lookout for danger. And so that's what makes up our minds now. So understanding that is when you're presenting someone with a challenge, you have to really highlight the benefit of achieving it. And you got to make sure that benefit outweighs their fear. So
the benefit outweighs their fear.
Yeah, because the fear is going to be there. So you have to really sell the benefit.
Okay. What do you perceive as the biggest challenge that human beings face today?
The biggest challenge that human beings face today is, again, just following the herd and people not thinking for themselves. So people say all Republicans are racist, so all Republicans must be racist. It's like what can you base that on? Or even better. I was on a panel this past Sunday. It was based out of the UK, but they had people from England, Ireland, the US, South Africa, Australia. Nice. Like it was like a worldwide panel. And so the premise of the show was, is social media influencing a real job? And then as people were given their takes, several people mentioned about doing research, and BLM was mentioned a couple times. And so
Black Lives Matter?
Yes.
Okay.
So I etched that into my memory because I have specific stances on that organization. But anyway, so then BLM was mentioned for like the 5th time now. And so I chimed in. I said, so I just want to ask everyone a question, because you're talking about research. I said, how many of you here support Black Lives Matter? And all the hands go up. And so I was like, all right. I said, how many of you have researched the organization? And then I think maybe a third of the hands went up. So it was 100% a second ago. Now it's down to 30%. And I was like, how many of you have donated money to Black Lives Matter? Only one hand went up.
Interesting.
And so then I said, do you know where the money goes? And only one person said that they knew. No one else knew. But like, if you really dig deep, that money goes to Democratic politicians. So they raised $1 billion. They didn't renovate not one school. They didn't give not one scholarship. Didn't fix up not one project housing. Nothing. Like, that money goes to politicians. And so people are rioting, breaking up businesses, ambushing police officers, thinking that they're doing it for the betterment of Black lives. And it's really to support politicians. And like, that's what's wrong with people nowadays, is they are so quick to jump on somebody else's word instead of taking the time to do some critical thinking of their own and formulate their own opinions.
How did the international group that you were on the podcast with, how did they respond to that?
It was like mixed reviews.
Because I noticed it's kind of like the whole mask, non-masking thing, to vaccinate, not vaccinate with the pandemic, that it's a very personal and a very emotional decision or perception coming from that primal part of the brain, which is difficult to rationalize because it's a different part.
Yeah.
So, in the Black Lives Matter, the originators, it was an extension of all human lives, as well. But it's so hard to change people's belief systems. So hard.
Yeah. And well, you hit on the key word with rational. So, there's rational, there's emotional. When it comes to these things, most people respond emotionally. It's like they don't respond rationally. Like when that whole thing with George Floyd came out, like everybody was freaking out. And my thing was, I was like, how did it get to that point? I mean, obviously, the cop being on his back was absolutely despicable and nobody deserves that. But my question was, how did it get to that point? I say, because that can't be the whole video. Whereas everyone else was taken to the streets and burning stuff. And I was like, I need to see the whole story. It's like before I formulate any type of an opinion. And I think that's a lost art nowadays. It's like people just want to be mad about stuff.
How about in our United States, in America, what would your message be based on that?
Mine, my message, I mean, it's just that though, is to get all of the facts. Like everything that you see on TV isn't real. So
Right.
the things on the media, like if I was actually showing my daughter the other day with I don't remember exactly what it was. It had Biden's stimulus package.
Mm-hmm.
And we watched 10 minutes of CNN and then we watched 10 minutes of Fox News. And I was like, look at this. I said the same topic delivered two completely different ways. Like I think that's a huge problem, is that people that only watch one, that's how, I'm not saying that those are the only two stations out there, but that's just my point. Like if you only watch a left-wing based TV show or a right-wing based TV show, you're only getting a part of the story. Like you're not getting the entire story.
And there's a psychological conditioning. There's a propaganda aspect that happens with that. And then there's no, or let me say not no, because that's an absolute, but there's little opening for thoughts of different opinions.
Yes.
So interesting. So I got to ask you about donating a kidney. What was that like?
It was a no-brainer at first. So, and then it got a little scarier as it got closer. But
well, take us to the beginning of it. So you're the youngest of 7.
Yep. So it was Christmas 2009.
Okay.
And my sister calls me. And so I'm thinking she was calling to say Merry Christmas, talk to the kids. I'll talk to my nieces and nephews. And that was it. But when I answered the phone, she had a different tone to her voice. And so I was like, Dee, what's going on? And she said she went to the hospital because she had some pain in her leg. In her leg. And so they did, blood tests, urine tests and all that. And that it came back that she only had 12% function in her kidneys. And that they were going to fail probably within a few weeks. And that she was going to have to start on dialysis. And
how old was Dee at the time?
I was 38, so I think she was 45.
Okay.
45 or 46, somewhere around there. And so I was like, all right. I said, well, out of all the siblings, I am the healthiest and I control my schedule. So it just kind of made sense. I was like, all right. So, well, I'll get tested. One of my other sisters said she would too, but she's the one that had the brain aneurysm. But like at the time, I mean, she was pretty healthy too, but she's the special education director up in Massachusetts. So I was like, you can't take that kind of time off. I said, so I can. And then my other brother, at the time, he was the only one of us that didn't have any kids. So he's like, I'll do it, but he was just not healthy at all. So it just made sense that I get tested. So if I get tested and I'm not enough of a match, then we'll talk about, someone else stepping up and doing it. So I went down to Manhattan. Actually, no, I did the initial testing here in Rhode Island. And so then I guess there's like a 6-point scale, and we were a 2 out of 6. Because as I said, you want to get technical. She's my half sister. So
I was going to ask that. Was she okay. So she's half. Okay.
Yeah. So the surgeon said 2 out of 6 was enough to move forward. And I was like, are you sure? I was like, because that's like 30%. Because I said, I don't mind doing it. I just don't want to do it for nothing. So I don't want to do it and then have her body reject it.
Now, by this time, how many children of your own did you have?
I had, 2009, the twins were babies. So I had all 5.
You had all 5 kids. Okay. Yeah. Wow. And so you're thinking about it. The physician says, okay, yeah, we can go ahead with this. Yep. What does the mother of your children say?
There really wasn't much she could say because.
So you were going to do it.
Like if it was reversed and she said, I'm giving my brother a kidney, like what can I say?
Okay.
Like that's your immediate blood brother. So
then what happens? Take us down, because that's a very, wow. Let's hear it from you. So take us through that story.
All right. So what made this one interesting was shortly after I went to New York to get the testing from the actual surgeons that were going to be doing, well, my part of the surgery. She ended up getting sick, and she caught a virus. So we couldn't do the transplant until the virus was fully out of her system. Mm-hmm. So this was early 2010. The virus didn't leave her system until April 2011.
Oh my goodness. And she survived it though.
Yeah. Yeah, but like the dialysis was making her very sick. And so now in the first couple tests, I didn't see her because at the time she was living in Queens and the testing was in Manhattan. And I was just taking day trips, just, jetting down early in the morning. It's about 3 hours from here. So I would jet down early in the morning, get the testing, and then come back up here. So like I didn't have time to be spending overnight or fighting the traffic to get through to see her. So the first time I saw her, it was heartbreaking because she just looked beat up. She looked beat up, just like emotionally spent, physically spent. I saw my brother-in-law and my niece, like just the looks on their faces. I was like, all right, we have to get this done. And so just shifting gears really quick, but it's relevant. So I started doing like minor league professional wrestling. Like I've always had a little fascination with it.
You got that. A lot up your sleeve that you've done.
like that entertaining wrestling, like the Hulk Hogan stuff. So
yeah.
Like I started out as a referee just because I wanted to be around it. But then I was like, I can do this. I was 38 years old. I'm like, I can do this.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And so I did it for a little while. Like it's brutal. Let me tell you, like what you see on TV, it's brutal. So I see why these guys have a lot of problems later on in life.
Yeah.
It's brutal. So anyways, as I said, it took a year for the virus to leave her system. So now we're into 2011 and we don't really know what's happening. And I had signed on to do a big wrestling show for this promotion. And it was in early May. So she gets the call in April that it's all clear. And I was one of the featured acts in this show. And so when she told me, she's like, we can do it like as early as next week. And I was like, I
got a wrestling tournament.
Yeah, I was like, about that. Because like it's a show for charity. Like we put on the show for disadvantaged kids.
And you do a lot of charity work too. I have to say that. You do a lot of charity work. So
a decent amount.
Yes. And that's so commendable. So here you are caught between donating a kidney for my sister D or a wrestling tournament for charity. What happens then?
Yeah. So I was talking to her about it. I was like, I already committed because like I held one of the championship belts. So
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's a big deal, So to just not be there, I was one of the, I wasn't the headlining act, but I think I was the second one. And so it was a big deal. Like, and there, it's all the match themselves. We kind of improvise, but the storylines are scripted. And so like someone else couldn't play my storyline the way I did because it was written for me, and I had my group of kids that they were just, even though I was supposed to be a bad guy, but the kids loved me.
The story, people forget that there's storylines behind these matches. Yes. Okay.
It's like I was supposed to be booed and the kids cheered for me every single time. But anyway, so it's like she was mad at first. Like she was mad when I told her. I was like, D, like it's been a year. I'm like, what's 3 more weeks? It's like 3 more weeks. Let me do this show, like, because I committed to it months ago. It's like we had no idea what your timeline was gonna be, and so, like I said, she was mad at first, and a couple of days later, she called me back, and she's like, you know what? She's like, you're doing this for me. She's like, you're putting yourself at risk for me. She's like, I can suck it up for a few more weeks. Go do your show, and then we'll do the transplant. So I got a blessing to go through and finish, which was good.
And how did you do in the match, the wrestling show match?
Well, it's like I was scheduled to lose because of
Okay,
the
so you
surgery.
did lose. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So I
So
was
I got to
scheduled to
ask,
lose.
do they pay you the same with that, or does there, or because it's for charity, how does that work real
Yeah,
quick?
no. It's like we did everything for the kids. Yeah, so like I just wanted to do it because it was fun. So like I didn't do it for any pay. It
You
was
could have
just for
been
fun.
hurt. But and that's the one thing I know about you is you're all about giving. So talk to me about the days leading up to the actual kidney transplant where you're going to donate this kidney to your sister D.
Okay. Yeah, and so just to put the closure on the wrestling story, so it's like yeah, I lost, but I lost on a technicality because they wanted to leave the door open in case I wanted to come back.
Mm.
So they had it to be almost like a double count out where we both stood up at the same time, but they said he stood up first. So they
Okay.
so they left some controversy in case I wanted to come back after. So anyway, so we left that one kind of on a cliffhanger. But now like I was good up until a couple days prior. Then I started getting nervous because now it's like, all right, now it's real. So
And you have 5 kids at home.
yeah, and it's just like, so what if one of them need one, and like
Right.
now I
Yeah.
don't have my spare anymore because my sister, her son, my nephew ended up needing a transplant also.
Really? So is there
Yeah.
some genetic component with the kidney disease
Yep.
or
Well, the one that she has is genetic. That's
okay.
why that was why he got it. And so in my immediate family, there isn't any. But like when my dad was going through his final days, he ended up going into kidney failure, but he had diabetes. So
Right, right.
and with his
Yes.
age,
Yeah.
that's probably what
That's a
played that.
consequence of the diabetes and the cardiovascular
Yes.
associated with that as well. But so getting back to you, so
Yeah.
coming up to the final days, you're like, I mean, it's almost like a buyer's remorse kind of situation, except that it's so amazing. And even when we have the best intentions, when we're right up against the
Mm,
challenge, then it's kind of like we start to think about the consequences or the
yeah.
potential outcomes. So then what happens?
Yeah, so like I wasn't really worried about myself because like physically I was strong. So I was like, I know I'll come back from this. But instead it was just, like what if I lose my other one? So like that just started and entering into my brain. But I was like, you know what? That's a what if. I said, right now, this moment, my sister needs me. I said, so that's what got me out of that headspace was like right now, this moment, she's suffering.
And
And
did they
so
tell
I
you
can
the
help.
risks to you?
I did not speak to anyone about it.
You did
So
not. Did they
no,
offer? Did
yeah,
they offer to tell you about the risks, that the
yeah,
potential complications and
yeah, the social worker and the kidney doctor both
mhm.
tried to just say, "Do you have questions? Like, do you want to know?" I said, "I want to know nothing." They're like, "Do you want to
Okay.
talk to other people?" I'm like, nope. I said,
Okay.
"Because I don't want to hear anything that's going to put doubt in my mind."
And that goes back to your original perception on life and making
Yeah.
things happen.
Yes.
Okay. So they're willing you, the anesthesiologist is there.
Yeah.
They're getting you ready for the actual transplant.
Yes.
What do you
So
remember from that?
so we were both in our beds, and so they wheeled us out because now there's two different teams. So like my transplant team, we have a transplant coordinator
Mm-hmm.
that speaks only to her coordinator. So like
Right.
my doctor doesn't speak to her doctor. Like everyone only speaks through the coordinators. So they
Huh.
had both in there just so we could see each other. And then I go to my side of the hospital. She goes to her side of the hospital.
So let me ask you here, if you weren't brother and sister, would it be different or would it be the same if the donor was somebody alive but unknown to the recipient? Would it be any different?
I mean, like, I don't know if they would like have them in the same room so they can say hi, before surgery. But I know that because there's a black market
Oh,
that
very big black market.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
for
why they do
organ.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why they do it that way, just to
Hmm.
make sure everything stays clean, and there's no shenanigans gets involved. So the last thing I said to my sister was like, I put my hand on her leg and I said, "Hey, when we wake up, you're gonna be able to pee on your own again." You know?
I love it.
So
Wow.
it's just one of those things that we all take for granted, you know, because like if you can't release it on your own, it can kill you.
Yes.
It's like we
Yeah.
take it for granted. So
For
no,
many reasons.
I wanted to leave it with that little bit of comedy. And then I just remember the anesthesiologist rubbing alcohol on my hand, and then I woke up in recovery.
And that's another thing I love about you. You always have that positive swing, and that's very hard to come by these days, especially, you know, with the whole pandemic, with the losses, the incredible losses for so many, on so many different levels. So you wake up, and then what happens?
So I woke up and it hurt. I gotta
You
say
did
it.
feel the pain. Okay.
Yeah, it hurt pretty badly. And so I was there with my now ex, and that night, that first night, I had some type of episode where it was very scary. So I was lying down, and then just all of a sudden I just felt nauseous,
Hmm.
and I started pouring sweat like instantly, and so I set
Hmm.
myself up like I'm shaking. You know, my ex pops her head up, and she's like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "Get the nurse." And like my heart was racing, and I said I'm sweating, and I felt like I was gonna vomit. So I was like, "Get the nurse!" Like, and she just kind of froze, you know. So
Scary. Sure.
yeah, so I ended up reaching for my patient belongings bag. I dumped it out, and I was just kind of like dry heaving. And now I had just had my stomach cut open because that's where they took the kidney through,
So they did the incision through the abdomen, through the stomach.
right through my
Okay.
belly button. Yeah,
Okay. Through the
yeah,
belly button then.
yeah. So
Laparoscopically
yes,
or
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
Wow.
laparoscopic. So yeah, the surgeon had asked me ahead of time that they're experimenting with a new way of extracting that would be a better healing for the donors.
Mhm.
And I was like, how new we talking?
Am I the experimental child?
I was like,
Okay. Well,
I don't,
thank you for your contribution to medicine,
thank you.
Robert.
I was like, I don't want to be number 3. So he's like, no. He's like, I've done over 100 of these. I said, oh,
Okay. And
all
what
right. Over
hospital
100,
was
I'll be
that
good.
out, by the way? What hospital
That
did they do?
was Weill Cornell Medical Center
Okay.
in
One of the
Manhattan.
best. All right.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah. They were great there. I got to
Hmm.
say, they were great people. And so, yeah. So the nurse ends up coming in, and she's like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "I have no idea." I was like, "I have no idea." And then I just had to just calm down, breathe. I don't know if it was a panic attack or something, or
Could have been.
yeah, or just like my blood pressure dropped. I don't remember exactly what would happen, but things were able to stabilize. And but that right there kind of told me a little story about my relationship because I told her because she froze.
Well,
Like
she was I mean, overwhelming, especially in the face of fear with
yeah,
somebody you love. People become, you know, there's that fight or flight, but there's
yeah,
also immobilization. I hear that a lot from patients.
mm,
I could not move. I was frozen
yeah,
for that moment in time. And
yeah,
it's not a conscious or intentional decision. It's one that just happens because that's
yes,
how the individual reacts.
yep.
So, did you ever find out what happened? Was it a drop in blood pressure? Was it due to because maybe the post surgery meds stopped or infection? Did they ever tell you what happened?
No, and I mean they probably did, but I just don't remember because like anesthesia makes it kind of loopy, and
Absolutely. Well, that's the
and I
point,
was
right?
sleeping. Yeah,
Yeah,
like
to know.
I was sleeping, so to kind of wake up, it was kind of
Yeah,
a
that might have been what was happening too, as the anesthesia was evacuating the body. Was
mm,
Robert, was that the first time you questioned your own mortality in life?
yes.
Okay. And what did that feel like?
It was scary. It was scary. Like through that whole process, like once I healed, I that's when I adopted the mentality that I'm not gonna do anything I don't want to do ever again. Because
Okay.
that's just when I felt like I didn't know what was happening. You know, like in
Yeah.
that moment, like for a second there, it's like, holy crap, am I gonna die? It's like
Yeah.
it's just a weird feeling came over
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
and
A
so
feeling of it's very surreal from what it
yes,
sounds like. And so the transplant went well. Dee's doing
yep,
okay.
yeah, she's doing great. She's
Okay.
doing
And
great.
has your relationship changed with her?
Well, no, because like we rarely see the New York peeps.
Okay.
You know, we'll get together once, maybe twice a year, but like we were always close. But you know, like I'll tease her every now and then where she's like, "Oh, so and so has my heart." I said, "Yeah, you have their heart, but you got my kidney." I was like, "Don't forget that."
Okay, so I have to ask these questions because I read a lot about, especially uh, recipients of organs taking on, there's a lot in the research, and there's some evidence of it taking on the characteristics of the donor, whether it be food preferences, personality characteristics, likes, dislikes. Did any of that happen that you're aware of with Dee?
Well, honestly, every one of my siblings were our personalities are all very similar.
Okay.
Yeah, so there
Okay.
was definitely nothing noticeable, but it's just been fun, you know. Like it's just been fun seeing her happy again. Like like I was saying, when I saw her in the hospital that time, and just the way she looked, and just to see her happy and
Mm.
smiling and dancing and back to work, and just seeing all that stuff again, like it's just awesome.
And here you are, you go from a restaurant manager, what other jobs in between to get where? Let's see your shirt. And we all tease
Oh, this
you,
is my RBF Fitness.
RBF Fitness. So with one kidney,
Mm-hmm.
your own business, you motivate people, you are extraordinary.
Raising 5 kids.
Raising 5 kids and changing the life of so many people and coming from an ordinary life to
Yeah.
become extraordinary, to do these things. How are you feeling today physically after the transplant, after the donor, after donating the kidney to your sister?
Sometimes I forget it happens until I'm in the
Okay.
shower and I see the scar. It's like, oh yeah. So the only time I really have to worry about it is if I do endurance events, which, you know, thankfully with COVID, there hasn't been any. But,
Okay.
but is like, I just have to make sure that I'm well
You're
hydrated.
well
That's
hydrated.
like the only thing that I really have to be conscious of is just to make sure I don't get dehydrated. So other
So,
than that, not much else.
one thing about you that people wouldn't know just by looking at you.
That I'm the fastest man in the world with one kidney.
All right. Are you really?
Yeah, in the 2018 transplant games, I broke the world record for the 100 meters.
So
In my
I'm gonna look at our audience and say this is an example of an extraordinary person. So tell us about Shut Up and Grind. Tell us about RBF Fitness.
Okay, so with RBF Fitness, I started that really it was supposed to be a hobby. So I was managing restaurants. I wasn't happy doing it anymore.
Mm.
Just because you know the kids were starting to get into more things, and not being able to go to after school things or to go listen to their chorus recitals. Just missing so many things, missing the family gatherings, having to work nights, weekends, holidays.
Yeah.
Asking to take vacation. Like I was just sick of all that, so I converted Mirage into a gym more so for like I need outlet because I was coming home yelling at everyone else. Just because I was bringing the stress of the job with me.
Mm.
And then, they could just say something simple like, "Hey, Daddy, want to hear my story?" No, I don't. But it's like, oh,
Okay.
I'm sorry. Just because I needed to decompress.
Sure.
So,
Of course. I think a
yeah.
lot of people
So,
can relate to that, especially nowadays.
yes. Yes. So I would come home, say hi to everyone, and then just go out into the garage and just start, lifting weights, boxing, or just something. Then I'd go back inside with a clearer mind.
Mm.
And so then I was like, why don't I train a couple people? It's like, why not? Get back to my coaching roots. So I put an ad out on Craigslist, and I actually got, and this is his term, a midget professional wrestler. He was my very first client.
He was a little person then.
Yes.
Cool.
Yep.
Okay.
Short sleeve Samson was his name.
Oh, I love it.
And,
Okay.
yeah, it's like he actually working with him is what got me thinking about doing it. Because at the time he was in his 30s as well. So I was like, maybe I'll give it a go just for a little bit, just so I can say I did it. So from him, I got my first female, this woman Allie, And then from Allie, I got 14 other people. And then next thing you know, I'm making close to what I'm making with my management job, working 60 hours a week, working 3 hours a week, doing
Wonderful.
fitness.
Okay.
Yeah. So then the universe spoke because I lost my management job. Completely blindsided. Like I didn't do anything wrong. Said this was 2009, again, the height of the recession, and just made a lot more money than the assistant did. So cut me and they let her go. Also, I uncovered a little embezzlement thing they had going on. So that probably didn't work in my favor either.
Probably not. Yeah.
Like I uncovered it I thought I found a good thing. I was like, hey, look, I found out what's happening. 2 weeks later, I was gone.
See, that's another thing we love about you is that you have these little asides that are so monumental. So then go ahead. So you find out that this is something that would actually work, that you're good at. You can help people. And then what happens?
Yeah, well, I wasn't initially sure how to grow it because I dropped out of college.
Okay.
So not once, not twice, but 3 times. See, I'm consistent.
Yep.
And it's like I really didn't know much about marketing. I didn't have the best credit and I had no savings. So it's like, how am I going to do this?
And you have 5 kids and a mom. Okay.
Yes. See, so the mom wasn't really on board with this plan. Like she just wanted me to go back and manage restaurants again because for the stability. And I was like, yeah, but you even said yourself that I'm coming home miserable. So why do I want to keep doing that just for money? Like there's got to be other ways to make money. It said, so through this process, I figured out I'm good at getting people to believe in themselves. I said, so let me just keep doing that. And then it's like, then we kept growing. And then it got to the point where 2 of my clients approached me and were like, why don't you have your own place? And I was up front. I said, stupid decisions when I was younger are biting me in the tail now. I said, like there's no way I could get a loan if I wanted to. And so those 2 got together. We met up. They invested money and we opened up RBF Fitness as a standalone location, 5,000 square foot, beautiful facility.
In Rhode Island.
In Rhode Island.
And then you also do podcasts. You're an inspirational and motivational speaker.
Yes. Yeah, I want to. Oh, actually, here I can actually show you. This is what the gym looked like.
Yeah, it's so great.
Yeah, it was really nice. So,
and that's your heartbeat.
I know on the recording they won't be able to see that, but that's what it.
Wow, I get to see it, and that's great.
From my garage to that.
Where can people get a hold of you, Robert, if they want to have you as a coach to learn to market their product or their idea for nutrition, for health, for exercise? Where is it on? Is what we're seeing now? Shut Up and Grind.
Best would be just to go to my website, robertbfoster.com/speaker.
Can you repeat that again?
Absolutely. robertbfoster.com/speaker.
Okay. And I want to thank you for being on Inside America's Minds. I know you have helped me immensely, and I want to thank you for that. And it's a privilege to have you on this show. Is there any final message that you want to give to our audience?
So the whole essence of Shut Up and Grind, it started a decade ago. I actually had an online show called Shut Up and Exercise.
Okay.
And the principles that I use with my fitness clients, I figured out like I can use that really with anyone in any industry. And so I was like, I want to rename the show into something that can appeal wide and not to just be boxed in the fitness scheme. So being boxed in fitness isn't a bad thing, but I just had bigger dreams because there's a lot of people out there that need to overcome some type of obstacle. And so one of my words is constantly in the gym. In the gym, it's like, come on, grind. It's like, grind. You're not grinding hard enough. Come on, you got to grind. Get on your grind. Like today's grind is like I was saying it 100 times a day. So finally, I was like, you know what? Shut up and grind.
I think it's great. And then when you're waiting to get on to do a Zoom conference with you or on a podcast. What does it say? Settle down. I'll be right there. I love it. Yeah. I mean, what you do is great for people who have even had psychological trauma, physical trauma, anxiety, depression, lack of motivation and initiation. It's the whole package. And you've earned the right. You've earned the right.
Thank you. Yeah, there was one of my clients. He lost his son when he was only 9, and so like he goes through moments where he just doesn't have it. So we were doing a big class this one day, and I see him up against the wall, and so I go over, like I put my arm on him, like, B, what's going on? And he's like, nothing. He's like, I'm just missing my son. And I was like, I've never lost a son. So like I will never try to understand what that feels like, but I have lost people. And so I went over to him and I was like, hey, I was like, you realize he's watching you. I was like, what do you think he's feeling watching you like this right now? I was like, he wants to see his father be a badass. I said, he wants to see his father crushing life. I said, so I think you need to get off of this wall and make that boy smile. And he's like, you're right. He's like, you're absolutely right. And then he just completely perked right back up. Because like, that's what I do when I have moments where I miss my dad. I can just hear his voice. The hell you down there crying for? What's all that crying gonna do? I can just hear him, So.
And see, I have a vision of my dad saying, Jody, I love you, but I don't get it half the time, and I miss that. I would do anything for that moment in time.
Yes.
You're amazing. And again, thank you so much. It's been,
pleasure.
Like I said, a privilege and a pleasure to have you on the show. All right. We'll talk soon.
All righty.